How do we keep the planet moving towards a greener future? It doesn't happen without driven entrepreneurs and inspired social impact leaders like you. This podcast will give the tools and insight you need to join the sustainability movement and save the world. This is Thinking Green with Mohammed.
Good morning, Thinking Green Nation. Today we have Angela and Sherri, two very, very cool guests. Can't wait to dive in and talk a little bit about their amazing clothing manufacturing facility out of Arizona. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cool. So Angela and Sherri, I want you guys to tell me a little bit more about what you guys do, how you got started, and where you're currently at, what stage of the business.
Well, Sherri, do you want me to start it off and then you can take it from where we are at the current stage?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, so this is Angela here, and we are a fashion incubator. It's called Fabric, and it stands for the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center. And the purpose of the incubator is to help people who have a really good idea for a clothing brand or a sewn product make it all the way through development and manufacturing, as well as business startup and branding and all that other stuff. But mostly we're focusing on helping people who have no prior education in fashion or experience get through the complexities of development and manufacturing. And we do this through a very unique model. We're actually a nonprofit, and we provide this really amazing tech-based system that is like a checklist, which we call a roadmap, that provides all of the steps and all of the resources and tutorials and education and everything somebody would need who has no prior experience or understanding of the process, so they could get through the process. It's, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of resources that help you along the way. And in addition to that, our incubator offers all the other support services somebody would need. So everything can be found under one roof, and they don't have to go all over the place to find things like a photo studio or an office or an event space or a photographer or any resources. It's as many resources as we could possibly think of to squeeze into this 26,000 square foot building. It's actually owned by the city of Tempe. So the other unique part about this is that we get to use this amazing building to offer all of these services and to bring the community together under one roof through offering free and discounted programs and services to the community. That's how we earn our stay there. And so that means that all of the entrepreneurs that come through all of our services and our programs are getting to do that at below market rates. And many of the things we offer them are free. And that's how we earn our stay in that amazing building. So it's a really unique place, and we haven't found anything like it throughout the rest of the country. And the other bonus about it is that what we're doing is trying to provide a sustainable solution to what is a broken industry. The fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries on the planet. It is actually ready for disruption here. Most of it is set up for big brands with a lot of money that have to overproduce overseas in order to get the cheap price points that people expect. And that means they end up with a lot of excess that gets burned or put in the landfill and a lot of very generic product. So we are helping people who they aren't the next, H&M or Forever 21, but they are a small brand with a good idea. They don't have millions or billions of dollars, can't meet those minimums overseas, but they need help making this unique product and solving a problem of some sort. And they can do it by doing it here domestically, which is a sustainable solution, in smaller quantities, which is also sustainable, and through our incubator, which has many levels of sustainability to it too. So I know that's a lot in a nutshell, but that's kind of the gist of what we do.
There's so much that you said there that I just absolutely love. And I want to start with you guys being a nonprofit. So it sounds like you're kind of sitting on this business model spectrum in this nonprofit with earned income. So you guys, charge for certain services, but you're providing such an incredible service to the community, and you're kind of educating and training this next generation of, fashion entrepreneurs, which to me sounds like a very, very difficult gig, right? Like just trying to compete, like you said, with these giants of the world that, have possibly sweatshops in third world countries operating for, $2-3 a day or whatever. And here they are trying to make an honest living, maybe even using sustainable materials, sustainable design thinking. So that's super cool. So tell me, is AZ Fashion Source, is that different than Fabric, or is it just kind of, walk me through that?
I'll take over here. This is Sherri. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Arizona Fashion Source is not a nonprofit. Arizona Fashion Source started in the building that Angela and I received in kind through the city of Tempe to support the designers. The manufacturing operation started inside Fabric, and in February of this year moved to a second location. It is an LLC that's owned by me, and what Arizona Fashion Source is doing to help support the designers in the incubator is we are offering on-demand manufacturing. The simple way to describe that is, instead of making a whole bunch of product that maybe you've researched and most of our designers have, and they're filling unique market needs. Either it's fixing a fit problem or a function problem. So I'm really tall and thin and I can't find any clothes to fit me, and I'm a model and I know there's a lot of models who have the same problem. Or I'm very curvy and I can't find comfortable clothes that look good and fit me. Or I'm disabled and I can't find clothing that is easy for me to put on and wear. So those are some of the examples of both the fit and function problems that our designers are trying to solve with their brands and lines and create a niche. And what we're allowing, instead of them having to make a whole bunch of product and hope it sells, what on-demand manufacturing offers our brands, and they're all digitally native, is the opportunity to sell it and then we make it. And so it's exactly matching demand with supply, and then it completely corrects the major problem with the fashion industry where they're overproducing to try to hit the bullseye to match demand. And this is something that almost no manufacturer is doing right now. Arizona Fashion Source currently has almost a dozen brands that we're doing that for. It's very much a technology-based system that's end-to-end, from the order all the way through the information that needs to be pulled, and it's very technical information by product. It's all the materials and trims that go into that unique item. It's the patterns and the cut and sew instructions that have to move along with that independent item so that it gets sewn correctly. And I'm also excited because in a couple of months, we're also going to add to our on-demand production the ability to custom print designs, and they can be placement prints. So they can go straight inside the pattern, and if you want to wrap a horse around your garment, because it's a placement print, the seams in the garment will exactly match by size. So anything you can dream up to put on your clothing as a designer or an artist, we can print on that pattern piece and then cut and sew it. So for our digitally native designers, it really gives them a leg up to compete sustainably in the market, because their customers can buy clothing that fits, that meets a need that they probably can't find elsewhere, that can come in the print design that they want. They could even put their own name on it, and then that can be cut, sewn, packed, and shipped out of our factory within about 3 to 5 days right now, and we're constantly trying to reduce that time frame.
Wow, I love it. On-demand manufacturing. So, would you say that essentially entrepreneurs or fashion designers, digitally native designers, will basically come up with this concept, start playing around, kind of ideating, iterating their different pieces, and then they'll go out and they'll kind of seek pre-orders, so that people will say, yes, I will buy this piece. I'll buy, we'll buy 100 of them, right? And then they come to you guys and they say, let's go ahead and build this piece that we've designed. You guys manufacture it, and then you meet the exact demand needed by the clients. You don't overproduce. There's not a bunch of waste. There's not a bunch of sales. Is that pretty accurate?
Actually, yeah. Gosh, you nailed it. Except the one thing I'm going to add is that when you first come up with that idea, you really have to test the market and you have to make sure that it's going to be successful. So at Fabric, that's where we develop the idea. That's where we have the pattern making and the tech pack created and the sew by sample, so that that designer can make sure that this is actually a viable product. And then as they start growing and they're getting more and more demand for this product, then they can move into the on-demand facility, because the facility does have some requirements in order for it to function properly as well. So you do have to have some demand for it coming in order to qualify for the on-demand. But that's the beauty of the partnership between Fabric and Arizona Fashion Source, is that we are that preparation to get somebody who's brand new to this and maybe hasn't even put their idea out in the world and has no idea if it's going to work and if anybody's going to want it. Normally, that's the thing that holds you back from entering this industry, because most factories require minimums of thousands of pieces, and you don't want to make thousands of pieces if you have no idea if it's going to sell. So at Fabric, we can make a tiny batch for you to test out, like 20 or 100 or 200. And then if you are successful in that, then you can move right into the on-demand option as well. So that's how.
So Fabric is where you test it first, and then once you've once you have a proof of concept, then you can take it over to the manufacturing, the on-demand manufacturing.
You got it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I wanna add to that on-demand manufacturing, because it's a software information system. It sounds like apparel manufacturing, and we do cut and sew, but the ability to be able to do it on demand really requires an intense amount of very specific information. So we can't take designers in unless they have all of that specific information complete, ready to go, and that information produces exactly what they want. I mean, the simple model is great detailed information in, perfect output of garment coming out of the factory. Not so detailed information, vague design information in, produces something that isn't what the designer wants. So most of the time, the designers come out of Fabric and get all the information together, and that also is flowing through a really unique information system that then feeds. If we get an order, that order then feeds into a system called iCreate that pulls all of the tech pack information and trims and everything into our system, so that we can pick it. It sends the cut file directly to our CT cutter, and that just flows through the manufacturing operation. It's really unique.
Definitely. So I have just so many questions. I don't know where to start, but let's start with what are some of the biggest challenges facing both like designers and the fashion industry as a whole today? Would you guys say, what are some of the biggest challenges?
Well, I think as a whole, the industry it's kind of become this way over the last few decades, where it used to be where we really cherished our clothing and we thought of it as, almost works of art. If you look back in history, people would be able to pass their garments down from generation to generation, and they, they really took care of those things and respected those things. And I think as time went on, and people were able to make more of these clothing items, and manufacturing took over sort of the bespoke, one of a kind type of clothing, then it was, how can I get it cheaper? How can I get it cheaper? And that drove these prices down so much for clothing that it's an unrealistic expectation at this point. And the consumer demand for having your clothing be less than your lunch is just not really the most sustainable way to do things. And so it basically forced all these brands to manufacture in very questionable ways. And that's what has made the fashion industry such a culprit in being so unsustainable. And, factories who want to survive end up having to not, follow regulations on what happens to the dyes and the waters, or follow labor laws and things like that. And that's where you end up in the position that we're in right now, where it's ready for disruption. We need to, put the appreciation back into our clothes, and be able to put the unique designs back into the hands of the creators and the designers, so that we have cherishable pieces that are unique, and that we pay fairly for them. And the whole purpose of the on-demand is to be able to reduce the price as much as possible for small quantities, because if you're making one at a time, and you're paying somebody to do that domestically, there are labor laws and there are minimum wages and, things like that will make it a much higher priced garment, because to make one could take you days, and if you're paying somebody what you pay somebody to make a fair living wage in the United States, obviously that is going to be an expensive garment. And so what's great about all of this is that on-demand uses so many automations that those automations can compete with the price points that, are close. They can get closer to those price points that we're seeing in the unsustainable manufacturing overseas. So that's one of the biggest obstacles that most brands face, is trying to get their price point into what their expectations are. And to me, I think it's more of, how do we educate our consumers on really what they should be, spending on their clothes? They should buy less and cherish the things that they have, and make sure they're buying staples that they can reuse and be proud of, basically.
And last for a long time, very long time.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sherri, what are your thoughts on some of the challenges? I mean, outside of, obviously, Angela's very comprehensive answer. Everything from, the sourcing of the materials to the sourcing of the labor, to just the quality of the fabric and so on and so forth. What kind of challenges do you feel like designers face? I'm sure it's tough to get out there and design a piece of fabric that just goes viral, right? Or that you throw on Instagram and overnight it becomes a big hit. What is required to kind of market your sustainable fabric line or design product line in a way where it becomes an Instagram hit? Or do you need an influencer? What are your thoughts kind of on the marketing side? Maybe that's an Angela question.
Actually, I want to address a business issue, and then I think we can talk a little bit more about how to market a new digitally native brand, which is challenging. From the business side, and Angela hit on it, this is really the major problem in the fashion industry, is that the overseas production at cost of people and planet has really set a consumer price expectation that is unrealistic, because the burden of that price is being absorbed by environments and labor overseas. And so it is something that has to change. What On-Demand offers, and this is a business education and choice, is the unit price for the garment is considerably more. It's considerably more than if you did a large quantity run in the United States, and even more than that if you did a large quantity run overseas. But the total cost of having garments made on demand is about 9% less. And what I mean by total cost is, if you have to invest in a lot of inventory, you are investing in the fabric for that and the shipping for that and holding the inventory and warehousing the inventory. And then you've put all your money into the inventory, so you don't have anything left to actually do the marketing and sales that can help promote your brand the way that you need to. And so what OnDemand offers is this unique opportunity where you don't pay for it until it sells. And you're exactly matching demand with selling. So it really allows you to finesse and pinpoint your marketing efforts and spend the money and time there instead of having it in a whole bunch of inventory, either sitting in your garage or elsewhere that, you know, you're trying to sell. And that problem is what wipes out most of the businesses that we help. We can get their product developed. We can help them with their website and their photography and models, and, you know, they can start selling online, and then they have to buy all this inventory, and it crushes most of the businesses.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. I mean, I'm in a totally different business, but warehousing a lot of product is extremely overhead intensive. And, you know, I carry a ton of inventory. It's a little bit different because I have solar panels and battery banks and, you know, things like that. But I totally understand, and I can see how this business model could disrupt and will disrupt, you know, the fashion industry, because people are waking up. You know, people like my wife and I, you know, we woke up one day, I think after we watched what was it, a Netflix
True Cost,
right? So we watched it on Netflix. We became more conscious and more aware of our you know, purchasing decisions as they relate to fashion, right? Before that, it was like, you know, find a t-shirt, buy it, you know, that I like. And then after watching that documentary, I started shopping at like REI, you know, and I would buy like Patagonia stuff and North Face. And even though, I mean, they were more expensive, and luckily I'm blessed and grateful to be in a position to where I buy the brands that I believe in. I buy the products that I believe, you know, weren't made in a sweatshop or didn't, you know, end up with a ton of waste and, you know, chemical dyes seeping into the oceans or whatever it is, right? But it starts somewhere. That journey, I believe, starts somewhere for a lot of people. And, you know, businesses and nonprofits like y'all's are set up and positioned in a way to where you guys can disrupt this industry and go out and say, hey, not only will we do on-demand manufacturing with you, which is a lot more sustainable, but then we also have a zero waste initiative to where we'll take all the trims and all the leftover, you know, pieces of garment and figure out what we can do with it to recycle it or to utilize it. And so I want y'all to talk a little bit about that as well. Maybe tell me about one or two cool recycled initiatives that y'all have done. I'm just really curious because you guys are like tech-based and then design minded, right? And then also like sustainability is at your core. And then you're like the creative types, which I'm not. So I'm just curious to learn about how you guys recycle, reutilize some of your excess garments, and maybe, you know, tell me one or two of the cool things that y'all have done with them.
Well, I would love to actually plug in one more little bit of information before we touch on that. And that was in relation to the last question you had asked about how else what are the other struggles that a designer goes through? And we just kind of touched on what the industry struggles are. But I think the struggles that an individual designer that they go through is actually related to this sustainability question that you're asking. So I wanted to plug this in. So at Fabric, one of the big things is that we're actually trying to also help them with all of the education and the resources that they need, because that is one of the biggest obstacles. Is most people have never gone to design school. They have no idea how to even measure a garment, much less get one made. You know, they have no idea where you go to begin to find wholesale fabrics and find them in quantities that are small enough that they don't need to buy 100,000 yards, and still get them at wholesale prices and things like that. And where do you go to have somebody make a technical pattern for you and a tech pack? And how do you even check and make sure everything that is getting made properly, and you don't end up with a mistake that you have to pay for? So the other way that we're solving that problem is to help people through all of that and provide them with those resources. And one of the resources and the hand holding basically through all of that, and one of the resources that we provide is a free sourcing library. That means that a brand owner, like let's say you wanted to start your brand and you came in to have us help you, we give you all the tools and all of the necessary resources. And one of those is you can come into our building and you can actually, for free, go through thousands of swatches of fabrics that are to choose from that you can order in small quantities to make your product from. Many of those fabrics are sustainable. Most of the mills nowadays do offer some sort of sustainable option, whether it's a fiber or in the way that the fabric was dyed or made or whatever. So that is a common thing that people are looking for. So we're trying to provide them with that assistance to get over that hurdle. And then what happens is, okay, so they're getting through the process and they're making their clothes with us, and we're helping them fill these, smaller orders, smaller batches. And we end up with scraps, of course, because, you can't cut a pattern out and not have some leftover. And no matter how good you are at squeezing the pattern pieces together. And so instead of taking that fabric and throwing it into the garbage, we always try to think of creative ways to use it. And so we have done over the years many different things with that fabric. We've have taken it to places that turn it into other things like insulation or dog bedding, stuffing, things like that. We've also had a program that is called Refabricate, where we take the scraps and we donate them to local creative designers who then patchwork the scraps back together, and they turn them into really unique new garments. And then to celebrate that, we created Arizona Eco Fashion Week, and every year we put those scrap made pieces onto the runway to show it off, and we sell the pieces, and the designer keeps half the money and the nonprofit gets half the money. And so it's a win-win for everybody. And then the brand owner knows that their scraps are being reused, and they can, shout to the world that they're manufacturing with a sustainable facility. And then just this year, we added another way to reuse those scraps, where we're taking all the scraps and we've created a community public art project where one of our walls inside of our event space at Fabric has a big giant piece of this fabric, and everybody who walks into the door can grab a piece out of the scrap bin and tie it onto this fabric wall. And if you can picture it, it looks like a shag carpet that's made of all of like a kaleidoscope of colors and different fabrics, because it's coming from the leftovers of every brand that we've manufactured for. So it's beautiful and unique. And eventually we hope that thing takes up the entire wall and it becomes a backdrop for photos, for Instagram photos and things like that. And it was made with the help of the entire community. So those are just a sampling of some of the things that we do. And then I'd love for Sherri to tell you a little bit about another program that is a sustainable program that we did with ASU using their banners before the pandemic.
This is a wonderful, wonderful story. Actually, we had worked on a project with the Centers for Habilitation, and they're in Tempe, and they have wonderful, wonderful clients, and some of them had a dream that they wanted to design and sew. And so we took the opportunity to bring those young ladies into Fabric and teach them how to design things, cut them, and sew them. And one of the first projects that they did is they created some bags. And during Eco Fashion Week, we had a trunk show, and the TCH ladies displayed their wonderful designs that they had made at the trunk show, and they had sold a bunch of them. They were a huge hit, of course. It was the next Monday after, this was over the weekend, and it was the next Monday, and I don't know the coincidence of this, but Travis, who works at the ASU Global Institute of Sustainability, came into my office and he said, we used to take the ASU banners that are unused and we would cut them up and we would make bags out of them, and we're wondering if that's something that you can do. And a light bulb went off, and I'm like, the TCH ladies can do this. And I asked him if he would be willing to support the Enclave program at our building to make those bags for ASU. And he was thrilled to do that. And ASU has something called zero waste. They actually take a lot of products that ASU uses and recycles them, and they store them all at this facility that's very close to our building. And we went and selected the banners that we thought, the girls came with us, that we thought would make the best banners. And it was a really fun project because you could place the patterns exactly where you wanted the image and see them wrap around. And the ladies at TCH did this, and they created these amazing bags. And the bags were picked up and sold at the ASU bookstore. And so it provided an opportunity for TCH to offer this dream job to these wonderful ladies, for ASU to have these wonderful bags that people loved sold at the bookstore and recycle the banners. And that's just one story, but there are countless things that come out of any manufacturing production that if you start thinking about a fully circular environment, I mean, we'd love to get there. And it goes beyond what happens to stuff that you can use to make things. It goes to when those things aren't usable anymore, can they be recycled? And, on the input of sustainability, the raw materials that go into them. And I think as our world thinks more about sustainability, the closer that we can make the raw materials, the actual goods that we want to consume, and ship them closer to our own local environments, the more sustainable we're going to be. And if those items are things that we love, then we're going to keep them longer and the cycle works. One just quick example is it annoys me that we have some of the best organic Pima cotton in the world in Casa Grande, and all of it gets packed and shipped to China and made into clothing that then has to be packed and shipped and sent back.
Yeah, is that somewhere in Arizona? You said it was called Casa Grande?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the Arizona was started with the 4 C's, and one of those C's is cotton. So there's a lot of amazing cotton that's grown here, but it's not being used to make textiles and clothing here. It could be.
But instead it's being shipped overseas, and then it's being made into products and shipped back over here. And that's what makes the carbon footprint of that product, exponentially higher than one, grown locally and then created locally and then, consumed locally. Right. So I'm kind of curious to know, since both of you guys are kind of, it seems, veterans in this field, like how much has the significance of sustainability changed in fashion over the last, couple of decades? Has it always been like this? Is this like a new awakening that's occurred in the last 5 or 10 years? What have you guys seen from that perspective?
Gosh, I have seen a big change. In fact, I, in the 1990s, lived in Los Angeles and worked in the fashion industry there. I had my own collection and I worked for other brands. And when I had designed my first collection, I to be totally honest with you, I didn't really think much about about the transparency of the supply chain. I didn't think much about the sustainability of the garment and how it got made or anything. I just ended up kind of falling into sustainability because of location. I moved from Los Angeles back to my hometown in Arizona, and I had to close down my fashion brand because there were no manufacturing resources in Arizona. And so I had to get really creative, and I started a one-of-a-kind ball gown collection made out of recycled t-shirts, because that was all that I could find in Arizona to use as material. There were no wholesale fabric vendors or anything like that, and I couldn't find manufacturing, so I had to make each one of a kind myself in my own studio. So that forced me to think a lot more about the whole supply chain and the whole problem with the fashion industry, and was kind of the spark that ignited what we do at Fabric today, because I spent about 15 years with this collection, which I call t-shirt. They're called t-shirt ball gowns. It's under my name, Angela Johnson Design. But if you can imagine a floor length, big full circle skirt ball gown with the corseted top, made out of 25 different t-shirts. And that was really my bread and butter, and how I paid the bills, and, how I kept going in the fashion industry for 15 years. But I started to get a lot of interviews on, sustainability because of it. And I had to educate myself. I was like, well, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it much. I was just doing it because of a need. And then I realized just how messed up the industry was. And I looked back on, the resources when I was in LA, and when I would go look at fabrics, it would be such a weird fabric to look at, something made from hemp, or, something made from some organic fabric. And it was always stiff, and it was always like really unusable. And there were no choices in the colors or the prints. And now fast forward to today, and your choices have grown so much. So when you're looking for fabrics, there are so many more choices, and there's so much more technology that has gone into these fabrics to make them like, unmistakably, easy to use. You can see the difference. They look just like their counterparts that we're all used to. And they don't look like, weird, something that is like stiff cardboard fabric anymore. So I think a lot has actually changed, and there's a lot more people thinking about this because of movies like True Cost. Fashion Revolution, put together that movie to really shed light on just all of these issues. And a lot more people have seen that movie. A lot more people care about all of this. And it also, you see it in other industries as well. I mean, if you look at the food industry, we've got a lot more farm to table kind of restaurants, and people really, caring about where their food comes from, and trying to have a circular economy, and a lot of different things. So I think the fashion industry is getting there, and I've seen a huge, huge difference just in the last decade.
Love it. I love it so much. Do you think
I'd also like to add at the manufacturing facility, and COVID has helped. I think the industry was in disruption and moving this way already, but COVID really forced a lot more digital, and I think that's going to be great for the industry because there's more choices out there. Digital allows a better, more efficient supply chain to be there, and the brands that we have in the incubator, if you start a brand from scratch, you can make choices up and down the supply chain. And, it's not greenwashing and saying, oh, I'm sending out my clothes in a compostable envelope. I mean, if you're a new brand, you can start from scratch and say, I want to use this material, and I want to use these trims that are organic and recyclable, and I'm going to make a choice to manufacture this close to home in the U.S. in a factory that is paying living wages to skilled workers, and I'm going to package it this way, and I'm going to make all of these choices up and down my business supply chain to be a sustainable brand. And I can tell you almost every brand we work with is making very conscious choices all along the way to have a sustainable brand. It's what they want. It's what I think more consumers want. And so I see this as a complete change, even from 5 years ago, where we felt like we were educating designers on sustainability. Now they're coming to us with, looking for those choices and demanding them.
Well, as an add-on to that, do you guys think this has been catalyzed by the demand, so the market demand itself, or has this been maybe catalyzed by the designers themselves who have said enough is enough and we're gonna, start this revolution and no more H&M, What do you think, or do you think it's been a combination of both?
I really think it's been a combination of both. And I hate actually throwing H&M under the bus. I know I mentioned them, but believe it or not, as of late, they are number one on the list for improving their supply chain towards sustainability. So they, because of true cost and things like that, they have actually completely made a pivot in how sustainable they are. So kudos to them for doing that. And I see a lot more brands caring about that. So I think it is a combination of consumer demand and, everything. We used to have people come to us and say, well, if I make it sustainable, I really don't think people care enough, to pay more for that. And, and we would also have people say, well, what you guys are doing is, and I've been told this forever, what you're trying to do is help a very small group of people. It's too small. It's a niche of people because there aren't enough consumers in the world that are willing to put, that value of sustainability over a cheap price point. And I didn't believe that. I said, it'll take some time to educate people, but once more people understand that, I really think that things are going to change, and it has to. I mean, we're broken here, and it can't go on like this forever. So I didn't believe that was something that consumers wouldn't adapt to. And of course, there's always going to be people who are on more of a budget. And I always compare this to, like, when you go out to dinner, you have a choice where you can go to McDonald's and you can buy $1 hamburger, or you can go to that mom and pop restaurant and you can buy an $18 hamburger, right? And there are people who can only go to McDonald's. There are people who only choose to go to the mom and pop restaurant. And then there are people who go to both in their life because it just makes sense in their daily life, right? And I don't think that's ever going to change. And it's not like anybody should make anybody else feel bad about not being able to afford something more expensive or whatever. But at the same time, if we all just look at our consuming habits and try to just really think a little bit more purposefully about what we purchase, we all can afford to just make smarter decisions about purchasing a smaller amount of items that we cherish longer. We don't need a disposable clothing industry. It really shouldn't be that you buy something and then you wear it once and then you throw it away and now you need something else. So if you're doing that and you're buying cheap clothes, that adds up to be the same amount you would spend on something that you cherish, that you carefully selected, that you kept in your wardrobe for a long period of time. I think a lot more people are gravitating towards that and understanding that.
I think it's also becoming like for me personally, it's become an obsession around minimalism. I want as little amount of things cluttering my life, and there's all the noise and all the distractions that are hitting us from every angle, every second of the day. The last thing I need is to open up my drawer and to find 8,000 pieces of garment, and I'm just scavenging through to find the 3 shirts that I wear, right? So for me personally, I find it very valuable to declutter and to be a minimalist. And if I need to spend $50 or $100 on a t-shirt, but I know that t-shirt's going to last me for years, and I'm never going to look at it and be like, should I wear this or should I not? Then I've won at that point. That's where I want to be. I want to be in a position where everything's minimal, everything's based on quality, value. So So obviously I'm going to segue into my Good Faith Energy brand, right? So we need to make a shirt. All right, guys, or gals, and the shirt needs to say, I'm lit off of solar power.
Oh, cool.
Some sort of awesome garment. So we're gonna come up with some design ideas. I have like 4 or 5 of them. But no, I'm on a serious note. I'm really amused and intrigued by this business model. I love everything you guys have done from a sustainability aspect. I came into this conversation honestly not knowing a lot about how sustainability plays in fashion outside of sustainable sourcing and sustainable labor and whatnot. But this has really opened up my eyes to everything else, because it really seems like it's so much more tech-based than I initially thought. Going in with the right, I don't know what the correct terminology is, but you said something like design plates or something like that, a fabric idea. And so, all of the initial tech-based, design-based, and then now you have to focus on the sourcing and, where you're going to, what type of materials you're going to use. And then you have to think about the marketing aspect and how you're going to get the sales out there. And then on the very back end, you're going to have to think about the waste and how to turn it into this circular economy. And Angela, you touched on that so many times. I have multiple podcast episodes, and this is only podcast like episode 10 or 11. But one's about the circular waste economy for food. I had another gentleman who talked about his a hemp operation. He's got a shoe brand called 8,000 Kicks. And he makes all hemp-based shoes, and then the soles are made out of ocean algae, right? And then it's put in a cardboard box, and then it's in a compostable bag, right? So literally exactly what you were describing earlier, where designers now have the ability to come in and completely design their brand from scratch and choose exactly what materials and what supply chain and what labor they're going to utilize to make sure that it's as sustainable of a brand as possible. And guess what? They're super successful. They love what they're doing because they feel good about how they're treating people and the planet, which is utilized a lot on y'all's website, and mine as well, right? Because that is where the future of sustainability is headed. So, I really appreciate y'all's times. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say that, your line or anybody else there who has a line, we're here to help. We can help you choose all those sustainable materials. And your line that you described with that print, anything that you want to print, we can also print that on your sustainable line. And the amazing thing about this printer is that there's 0 water waste in it. It's a pigment-based printer. You can print on any material, so we can create whatever artwork you want and do that sustainably as well.
And industrial hemp, have you guys messed with that at all? Good fabric, bad fabric? What are y'all's thoughts on that? Angela,
it actually prints beautifully. It's durable and it prints beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This podcast episode is brought to you by Good Faith Energy, the premier solar provider of North Texas. Thank you all so much for joining me, Angela and Sherri. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to working on an upcoming sustainability brand with you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Thinking Green with Mohammed Abdallah. This episode was brought to you by Good Faith Energy. For more information, check out goodfaitenergy.com. Make sure you subscribe, give us a review, and leave a 5-star rating. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. See you on the next episode of Thinking Green.